Hey, I've got this idea for a new movie. Okay, let's hear it. You see, it's like The Crow. I like it. But then we add a bunch of sci-fi stuff to it, like microchips and talking cars. I love it. And then we just sprinkle a few plot holes in on it. Are you sure plot holes would be a good idea? Why not? After all, it worked for the new Star Wars trilogy. Now, I've been looking forward to Upgrade for a few months now, ever since I saw the Red Band trailer a couple of months ago, and it is almost as exquisite as I hoped it would be. It is kind of an evolution of the Crow storyline, although I probably shouldn't be calling it that because the story is actually way older than that, but whatever. Basic summary of the plot is, it's set in the nondescript future where talking cars and household AIs are commonplace. This guy named Gray and his wife are out for a drive one night when all of a sudden there's a car crash. They get jumped by a couple of thugs. The thugs paralyze Gray and murder his wife. Gray wants to catch these guys, but what's he gonna do? The cops are basically worthless, and he's stuck in a wheelchair. Fortunately, he has a well-connected buddy who can put this brand new computer chip in the base of his neck called STEM. As is explained in the movie, STEM serves as sort of a bridge between Gray's body and his brain, which now allows him to move as if nothing had happened. But there's one added perk that Gray didn't know about. See, STEM, if given permission, is able to take over his body and performs the most badass fight scenes. So Gray and STEM work together in order to find all the thugs who murdered Gray's wife and bring them to justice through very violent means. Now, I've seen a few trailers that say that this movie is very gory and very bloody and I've certainly seen worse. Frankly, if you're going in there for a gore fest, you're going to be disappointed. There are some bloody scenes, and there are a lot of action scenes where things end very messily. But frankly, this movie doesn't hold a candle to something like Hostel. There are definitely scenes that will make you a little squinch though. For example, we see almost the full surgery of STEM getting implanted into Gray's neck. Like, they actually cut open his neck and you see all the nerves and tendons and sinews and stuff. Like, they actually, it's not like a brief boop, pull the camera away kind of a thing. It's like stare down at very slowly as the microchip is being implanted in his neck. It's like you got a 10-second shot of just this open surgical wound. It's like, why would you hold on that? So there's your warning if you're not a fan of gore. It's really not that bad though. What's really good, and the thing that I was frankly looking forward to, is the cinematography. Now, for the most part, the cinematography is pretty basic. Simple shots are used to explain simple situations, not a big deal. But when they get to the actual fight scenes, ooh, that's creative, that's pretty, that's what I have fun with. And unfortunately, you see a good portion of it in the trailers. There aren't too many fight scenes like this. I mean, they're still a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. But if you've seen the trailers, you get a pretty basic understanding of what they're like. It doesn't exactly show you all the best parts, but it does show you a chunk of them. That being said, seeing them in whole is very enjoyable. You have Gray performing all of these stiff robotic movements, and the camera kind of follows him in that same stiff, robotic, calculated precision. It's the juxtaposition of the precise movements of the camera versus Gray's precise movements while he's fighting that makes the cinematography so much fun. And it does heighten the experience because you're seeing what's effectively a cyborg beat up a bunch of guys and completely outclass them. So it's not just stupid camera tricks for the sake of stupid camera tricks. There's actually meaning and depth behind it. I'm getting way too film nerd on this. But of course, that wouldn't be possible if it weren't for an extremely impressive performance by Logan Marshall Green. Hands down, the most impressive part of this movie is seeing Marshall walk around after STEM's been implanted in him. You see, while he moves normally at the beginning of the movie, as humans do, once he's been paralyzed, he actually has to focus a lot on body acting, not just emoting and full physical motion. But keep in mind, he's supposed to be stuck in a wheelchair and can't move anything below his neck. He does kind of cheat on that in a few scenes, but it doesn't ruin the moment. Scenes where he's supposed to be paralyzed, but he's clearly moving part of his upper torso in order to get around. But once STEM's been implanted in him and he's using that in order to assist moving around, you notice his movements become much more precise, much more efficient. Like he's doing the most calculated move in order to get exactly what he needs. And this is made very obvious early on when he's pouring himself a drink. See, where most people would probably just pour, estimate, see what they needed, and then put the cup down, Gray actually reaches out, moves very precisely in exactly the right angle, puts the cup back, and then walks away. I know I probably sound like I'm really overanalyzing it. The thing is, he's able to maintain that performance for almost the entire movie. It's not some over-exaggerated robot thing. He's not like doing this kind of a situation where he's all right angles and sudden turns. It's very subtle. They are kind of sudden, but they seem real, like a robot trying to be a person. I don't know how much sense I'm making, so you're gonna have to watch the movie to find out what I'm talking about. Those motions are, of course, amplified in the fight scenes, but again, you already know those are awesome. And one more thing of note, and you can actually see this in one of the trailers, but his performance in differentiating his facial expression versus what his body is doing. There's one scene where he's attacking one of the thugs in the thug's house. Stem has taken over for the first time, and Gray is kind of freaking out like, oh my god, I can't believe we're actually beating the crap out of this guy. This doesn't feel right. Stem is, of course, unapologetically just smashing plates on the side of this guy's head, and Gray's freaking out like, oh my god, what the hell? And meanwhile, his body is reacting violently, but his face manages to stay kind of in freaked out mode. For the non-actors out there, that probably doesn't sound terribly impressive. It's actually a lot harder to differentiate facial expressions versus body expression than you'd think. This movie's got me going all sorts of nerd. So I did very much enjoy the movie. It is not perfect, however. There are some glaring flaws. First off, the movie has a very slow start. Now, the time is used well. It establishes who Gray is, who his wife is, how he adjusts to being paralyzed, and it's all done to show necessary steps of character growth. The problem is, the pacing is kind of a mess to start with. It felt like he didn't actually get implanted with STEM until like the 30-minute mark, and things did pick up after that. But before then, it was kind of a drag. But that's not as bad as some of the plot holes. Now, the plot holes aren't movie destroying. It's not like you're gonna sit there and complain about it for hours on end like so many people are doing with the new Star Wars movies. But there is one that I wanted to talk about, so spoiler warning, if you haven't seen the movie and you want to see it, skip to this time in order to not hear the spoiler, because I'm about to give a spoiler and it's gonna spoil things. There's your warning, you don't get to complain now. Okay, so there's one character I didn't mention earlier for this purpose. See, the guy who gave STEM to Gray was this boy genius guy named Aaron. Aaron is the head of Venture Computers or something like that. It's basically Apple in the future. He created STEM and created STEM to be this perfect do-everything kind of a microchip. However, it turns out that this entire thing, paralyzing Gray, murdering his wife, so on and so forth, killing all the other guys, the thugs. Turns out that the whole thing was orchestrated by STEM. STEM himself was actually somewhat sentient somehow and decided that he wanted to have a human body. Well, Gray doesn't have all these different hookups and technological features. He doesn't have a computer chip in his brain that allows him to connect to the internet and things like that. So Gray was the perfect choice. All STEM had to do was give him the right motivation in order to want to get STEM implanted into his neck, and there you go! Why is this a problem? Because Aaron admits that he hasn't been running his company for years, apparently. That has been STEM guiding him along, and there are some subtle touches that hint at that. The problem is, at one point, Aaron actually takes action to shut STEM down, and manages to do so. Like, he takes STEM completely offline. So if STEM has been orchestrating this entire murderous deal, if STEM has been running Venture Computers or whatever it is for all this time, then why was Aaron obeying him if he had the ability to shut him down this whole time? I mean, why do anything? Was Aaron implanted with his own STEM chip? I don't think so. It was never established. If he was afraid of STEM, which he clearly was at the end of the movie, then why not just take the chip and snap it in half? Oh, it's his life's work. He's done decades of research in order to get up to this point. Yeah, and he's afraid of dying. At some point, your survival instinct is going to kick in and say, you know what, maybe I should go back to the drawing boards and start over. I don't know, it didn't wreck the movie for me, but at the same time, it's like, guys, how did you not see this? How did you not prepare for this? Because there were ways around that I thought of, but that would take way too much time to get into. Overall, this was a loud, violent, bloody, fun popcorn movie. Lots of action, frankly not much depth, but sometimes that's what you want. The movie is definitely worth watching just for the fight scenes though. I definitely had a lot of fun watching it, and not just because I got to nerd out while I was watching it. If I had to rate it, I'd give it at least a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10. I don't know, it kind of fluctuates. 6.5, that's what I'm going with. So if you're a fan of The Crow, then definitely go check this out, because it's kind of basically the same movie.